Hello, everybody. I'm Caitlin. My short height and young looks may make me look like a kid, but appearances can be deceptive. I'm actually 34 years old. I know it sounds crazy, but it's all down to my super rare condition called Turner syndrome. It's a disease that only females have. It means I only have one X chromosome, and as a result, it means I look far younger than I am. And I'm in the same height as your average 11-year-old. So even though I'm an adult, I pass for a kid. You may think this sounds great. Sure, I can go crazy in a candy store without raising suspicion, but other than that, looking way younger than I am is hard to live with. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My bro Jeremy and sis Dayla may be younger than me, but because of my condition, they both look older than me and they tower above me. I'm going to take you back to when I was 16 and my parents noticed that not only did I look younger than Dayla, but I was shorter than her too. I told myself it was nothing. I was just a slow developer, that's all. But my mom thought otherwise, so she dragged me to 7 different doctors. Then voila, one of them diagnosed me with Turner syndrome. Naturally, neither me nor my family had ever heard of this condition before. I mean, come on, a disease that makes someone stay young forever? It sounds like something out of a movie. Relax, I'm not dying or anything, but it does mean I'll never look like an adult. I realize people spend a bunch of money to look young, yet here I am, doing it without even having to try. But trust me, looking like a little kid when you're not one can be problematic. For instance, high school was a nightmare. I had this one friend called Alice. At first, we were pretty inseparable, but as time passed and she aged and I didn't, she began to single me out and join the other girls in making fun of me. They pretended to make baby crying noises when I walked past them, and one of them even put a baby doll in my locker with a picture of my face stuck to it. I stopped being friends with Alice after that, and watched on with sadness as other girls my age started dating boys, but no guy ever noticed me. Like seriously, they literally didn't notice me, especially the tall ones. And for the few that looked down and saw me, well, they made corny jokes like, "Hey, Caitlin, how's the weather down there?" And, "Someone better call kindergarten as they're missing a kid." However bad the teasing got, Dayla and Jeremy were always there for me. From cheering me up when I felt down, to passing me the cookie jar off the top shelf. I may be small, but I'm determined. So I made it to college and ended up qualifying as a teacher. On my first day of my new job, I was extremely nervous, but I reassured myself that I could do this. On seeing me for the first time, my students were surprised and clearly confused. One of them spoke and said, "Excuse me, little girl, are you lost or something? Where's your mommy?" Wow, the nerve of that girl. As if she just said that. I decided to take a deep breath and said, "No, I'm your teacher. I may look like an 11-year-old child, but I assure you that I'm not." They all snorted and laughed, and one kid said, "Yeah, right." So I passed my ID card around the class. I couldn't help but smile as one at a time they looked down at my ID with shocked faces. Priceless. During my first class, I taught my students about Turner syndrome so they could understand it. After that, they were respectful toward me. Apart from this one boy who clearly viewed himself as the class clown. Then he said, "Maybe next time you should wear a chipmunk outfit, or maybe an elf costume because that will totally fit you." The whole class laughed. So I gave him 4 weeks detention. I can assure you there was no laughter after that, nor did anyone make any comments about my condition again. One lunchtime, I was sitting in the staff room when the science teacher named Henry came over and sat next to me. Then he smiled and said, "Hey, how's your first week going?" Talk about handsome. My legs instantly felt like a jelly. We started talking about my condition, and he was very sweet about it. "I don't mind. I studied Turner syndromes before. It's okay because I like you. It's who you are." His words made my heart flutter. He was so sincere and kind. We started hanging out more, and then we started dating. Don't tell anyone, but sometimes I found him so irresistible that I couldn't resist kissing him in the janitor's closet. Of course, my condition caused us some problems. One time Henry and I were in a bar. I asked the bartender if I could have some vodka. He said, "Sorry, kiddo, you're too young to have some alcohol." Even when I showed him my ID, he still wouldn't serve me. Unbelievable. Another time we were kissing on a bench in the park. It was so romantic. Until some old lady screamed at us, "You sick pervert! How can you kiss a little girl?" To make it even more awful, 2 police officers showed up and I had to explain myself to them and show them my ID. Luckily, they believed me, and Henry wasn't arrested, but the old woman continued to give Henry dirty looks. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more awkward, we popped into the grocery store. Henry had just passed me the cereal, which I was too short to reach, when I heard someone behind me say, "Caitlin? Is that you?" Oh boy, I recognized that voice. I turned around and, yep, it was my old childhood friend Alice. She smirked and said, "Wow, you haven't changed a bit." But I'm not surprised. You never change. I replied, "Don't you have somewhere else to be? I'm hanging out with my boyfriend." She gave a shocked look as she looked at Henry. "Wait, you're dating her? Isn't she, a bit on the short side for you?" He just shrugged and told her, "I don't care what you think of her, as she's the most amazing woman I've ever met." She flicked her hair and replied, "Why don't you date someone your own size? I mean, look at me. I'm beyond sexy." "Yeah, from space." I rolled my eyes. Everyone in the store started laughing at her. Now look who's embarrassed. You know what they say, payback's, well, you know the rest. Regardless of all this drama, Henry stuck by my side and continued to support me. He even arranged for our families to meet. We met up in a restaurant. When Henry's parents saw me, they were kind of surprised. His mom greeted me with a hug, but his dad just glared at me. My parents keep asking Henry questions while Dayla and Jeremy chatted with Henry's twin sisters about sports. Things were going fine until out of nowhere, Henry's dad slammed his hand on the table and said, "I can't take this anymore. You shouldn't date my son. He's too good for you. Your shortness is going to ruin his life." I tried to keep composed, but inside this hurt more than I can possibly express into words. Henry stepped in and said, "That's enough, Dad. You can't treat people like that just because they're different. Shame on you." Then he got down on one knee and took a ring out of his pocket. "Caitlin, I love you, and I always will. So will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" At first, I was speechless, but then I found my words and said, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you." I was crying with joy, and my family and his mom were clapping and hugging each other. But then Henry's dad shook his head in disgust. Then he stormed off. On our wedding day, Henry's dad refused to show up. I felt so bad for Henry, but he told me we shouldn't let his dad's bad choice ruin our perfect day. I was about to walk down the aisle when his dad burst into the room. Oh no, was he going to ruin the wedding? Everyone was staring at him, and I thought I was going to collapse from the shock of it all. But then he said, "I'm sorry for how I acted. It was wrong of me to judge you on your condition. I would very much like to be here for your wedding if you'll have me." I cried out, "Yes, of course, take a seat." Our wedding day was magical, and so was our life together. Things are still going well for Henry and me, and I'm now the happiest I've ever been. I may have the appearance of a child, and yes, my condition is never going to go away. But my life as an adult is amazing, and this is all thanks to the remarkable people I have in my life. I'm so fortunate to have them supporting me, and with them by my side, I'm able to find my inner strength and conquer any obstacles that get in my way, however big they may be.
Hey, Sally here. I'm 25 years old and I love makeup. I mean, I really love it. I don't even answer the door barefaced to the postman. My fascination with makeup started back when I was just a little kid. My mom was a famous beauty blogger and even created her own cosmetics brand. Everyone from renowned models to Hollywood actresses wanted to use her products. Back then, the industry was different. It wasn't about YouTube and different media channels. Instead, people like my mom had to take different avenues to promote their products. I remember how amazing it felt to walk into a drugstore and see my mom's makeup on the shelves. But then, my mom's world came crashing down, and it was all thanks to one lame model. I knew something was up when my dad picked me up from school. He barely ever picked me up. Mom always did. And weirder still, he didn't say a single word to me. Then, I walked into our house to find Mom standing in front of the mirror as she smeared makeup all over her face. My mom was a glamorous, perfect-looking woman. I'd never seen her look or act like this before. I remember just staring at her, not knowing what I should do or say. Then she started crying, which caused the makeup to streak down her face. I remember thinking that she looked like a scary clown. She seemed so out of control. In a harsh tone, my dad said to her, "Will you just look at yourself? How can you let Sally see you like this?" Then he covered my eyes and pulled me out of there. I asked him what was going on, and he sighed and told me how a model had a bad reaction to the products during my mother's live webcast, and now she was getting treatment at the dermatology hospital. She blamed it on my mom's cosmetics products, which meant that both the press teams and police were now involved. Now the beauty industry was boycotting the range that my mom had worked so hard to create. The next day after school, my mom seemed to be in good spirits. She took me for a milkshake, and we sang along to Disney tunes in the car. I thought that everything was back to normal, but then we arrived home, and she sat me down and said to me, "Sally, you're going to be my model and save this family." Then she filmed herself applying her makeup products on me. She turned to the camera and said, "See, I dare to use my products on my daughter's delicate skin because I know there's absolutely nothing wrong with them." The problem is that footage of a young girl having her makeup done is boring in comparison to the shocking pictures of a famous model with burned skin. All the brands turned their backs on her, and she went from super successful entrepreneur to blacklisted overnight. An investigation later proved that the model's skin damage was due to dangerous fake Botox injections, not my mom's products. But this was too little too late, as my mom had already lost all her deals and partnerships, and the money spent on pricey lawsuits made my family bankrupt. After that, Mom left the beauty industry behind her. But that afternoon changed my life. I always felt a sense of self-esteem as growing up in an environment full of famous beauties. But that day, after being put on makeup by my mother, I felt so pretty. I looked in the mirror and found myself like all the dream girls I'd seen from my childhood. My new, beautiful appearance made me more confident. Since then, I started practicing makeup, and this obsession doesn't stop until I grow up. By the age of 14, I wouldn't be seen leaving the house without a full face of makeup on. It gave me this added layer of confidence and made me feel ready to face the day. When I had my makeup on, then it didn't matter as much that my parents were now poor. I looked and felt beautiful, and I could handle the world. Now at 25, I still adore makeup. I'm a self-confessed makeup addict. Even my boyfriend, Chris, had never seen my bare face. When I stayed over at his, I went to bed with a full face of makeup on. Then I waited until he'd fallen asleep so I could sneak into the bathroom and take it off and moisturize. Then I woke up 2 hours before he did, just so I could apply my makeup, then get back into bed and look like I'd just woken up that glamorous. Yes, keeping up appearances was hard work, but when he looked at me like I was the most beautiful girl in the world, well, that made it so worth it. Only on one occasion, Chris woke up early and walked in on me doing my makeup. I totally freaked out and immediately covered my face with my hands and screamed out, "No, don't look at me! I'm hideous!" He laughed and said, "Don't be silly. A bit of makeup doesn't change the fact that I love you and think you're the most beautiful girl in existence." This was sweet and all, but I still shouted at him until he left the room so I could finish off my makeup. His words got me thinking, though. Did he really, truly love me? We'd been together for 2 years, yet he'd never ever seen me fresh-faced. So how could he possibly know if he loved me if I wasn't wearing it? I couldn't stop thinking about this. I needed to know if he truly loved me for me or not. So I took all my makeup off. Yep, even my clear lip gloss. Then I tied back my hair and put on casual clothes and a pair of sneakers. I was standing right behind him at his favorite cafe. I hesitantly went to the table where he was sitting and was confused as to how to speak. That was when he looked up at me while still scrolling through his phone and said, "Yeah, you can take that seat as I'm leaving soon." He didn't recognize me. Interesting. I sat down in front of him, pretending to be a shy, cute girl, and softly starting up a conversation. I tried varying the tone of my voice to ask what I should order, and it worked. He completely thought that I was just some random girl. After we chatted for ages, I said to him, "I see you don't really have to leave soon, huh?" He smiled and complimented me on being cute. It made me feel a lot more confident. So by then, I had the courage to tell him that I was his girlfriend. But suddenly he grinned and said, "If you don't have a boyfriend, I wonder if I have a chance to get to know you?" What? He was still in a relationship with me? Unbelievable! Well, another plan just popped up in my head, so I tried to stay calm and replied coyly, "I'd like that." After that, I started living 2 different lives. When I put my makeup on and become energetic and attractive, Chris complimented me on how beautiful and charming I was, and proudly showed me off to his friends. But when I appeared with a bare face and acted all coy, he said that he loved how sweet and rustic I was, and that he thought girls who wore makeup all day were tragic. Tragic? How dare he? He would lie about going out with friends so he could spend more time with makeup-free me. Then he kissed makeup me and told me how he loved how glamorous I was and how I was the only girl for him. Yeah, right. I couldn't believe how fake this guy was. There I was thinking he loved me, but now he was cheating on me. With me! A playboy like him didn't deserve any version of me. So it was time for revenge. So when he asked makeup-free me to go on a trip, I shyly accepted. I knew he just wanted to trick an innocent girl into bed with him. But I'm not an ordinary girl anyways. As he was chilling out in the pool, I shyly said I would take a shower and wait for him inside. And I swear I saw his eyes brightened like a magpie. I ran into the bathroom to turn the shower on. Then I left a trail of makeup-free me's clothes and then snuck out into the room nearby that I'd booked for the night. There, I transformed into makeup me, then got back ringing the doorbell. Obviously, he had to hurry from the pool to open the door, and when he saw me, he turned so pale. I walked in without his welcome, calmly walked through the luxurious room, and picked up every trace of adultery I'd previously scattered on the floor. The sundress, the bikini, and even lingerie. Then I threw them at him. He was unable to say a word and got panicked when I kept walking straight to the toilet, where there was the sound of a shower pouring water, calmly saying, "The person I need to hit is inside, isn't she?" He panicked and ran in between me and the door. "It's not worth your action, honey. She's nothing. You know you're my only one." I asked him, "Is she beautiful?" "Nah, she's boring and old-fashioned. Not like you." I pushed him away and opened the door to enter. He panic-jumped right behind me and froze when his mistress was nowhere to be found in the hot shower steam. He probably thought she somehow escaped herself and, at least, saved his life. I still walked in, undressed, and put a bathrobe on myself right in front of him, then walked over to the mirror and started removing my makeup. He was still so bold and shameless. "I completely had you fooled. There is no girl. This is my plan to bring you here. Let's enjoy the night, babe." He really had a talent for lying. I just silently removed all the makeup on my face. "I've never seen you remove your makeup. Tonight will be really great," he said as he walked over to hug me from behind. I finished by tying my hair up and wiping the steam on the mirror with my hand and said, "So, who do you want to sleep with tonight?" He looked up into the mirror to see another me and screamed in horror, running away as if he'd seen a ghost. That night, I gloatingly stayed in that luxury hotel room and enjoyed the first day of my single life. Makeup is my passion and hobby, and I won't change it for anyone, especially for that kind of guy. But I now realize that I deserve to find a guy who loves me unconditionally, whether I'm the glamorous, makeup-covered version of me or just plain, coy, makeup-free me. Can you imagine what it's like to be so pretty that people actually bully you because of it? Most of you are probably thinking that being pretty is an amazing thing, but just wait until you hear my story. I'm Jasmine, and I'm 16 years old. And yep, I am indeed named after Princess Jasmine, because the moment I was born, my dad said I looked exactly like her. So growing up, I was naturally very pretty, and the older I got, the more the boys chased me. But I was oblivious to this. Just because I was pretty didn't mean I was arrogant about it. In fact, I was a very caring kid. I always liked to help people in my class and really didn't care about the way people looked. I wanted to help everyone. One time in 3rd grade, there were 3 boys fighting, and I went to help them. But to my complete shock, they were fighting over me. Our teacher eventually broke up the fight and had to split them all up and make them sit on the opposite side of the classroom, away from me. I was so shocked. Why would people fight over me? Well, by the time I was in 5th grade, I'd gotten even prettier, and at one point, there were 5 guys fighting over me. One day, 2 of those guys, Jack and Tyler, were both running towards me from opposite sides of the playground. I was just standing there watching them come towards me, and I panicked and quickly jumped out of the way. They both ended up bashing into each other and fell over. Honestly, it was so funny. I helped them up, but inside, I was dying of laughter. Most girls would probably love getting attention like that, but it drove me crazy. I just wanted people to like me for who I was, not because I was pretty. Even though I got tons of attention from boys, the girls didn't like me. There was one girl called Mia who hated me so much, she actually bullied me. She would always go out of her way to do horrible things to me. Like this one time where she jumped on me in gym class and broke my right arm. She pretended it was an accident, but I know she deliberately did it. And obviously, I use my right arm for everything, so it was torture. I cried so much because for months I couldn't write anything, and writing was my most favorite thing in the world. And that wasn't the only horrible encounter with Mia. One time I was at the park with my big brother, and he left me alone on the swings so he could go hang out with his friends. As soon as he was out of sight, I saw Mia heading towards me. She looked angry, and I quickly closed my eyes because I was so scared. I thought she was going to hit me. But suddenly, I heard someone running, and I opened my eyes just in time to see my brother grab her arm to stop her from hitting me. He was protecting me, but then he took it too far. He hit her in the face so hard, he knocked her front tooth out. She was screaming and crying, and my brother just grabbed me and made me run out of the park with him. After that, Mia didn't bother me anymore. I moved up to middle school and never saw her again, but my life didn't get much better. You see, at my new school, the uniforms were so ugly. I went from being the pretty girl to a complete tomboy. We had to wear these red polo shirts with baggy nude pants. Honestly, it was not a good look for me. Sure, I was glad not to be the girl guys were fighting over anymore, but I didn't like feeling ugly in the uniform. Then, when we had the school dance, we were finally allowed to wear whatever we wanted. I decided to wear my favorite little black dress that showed off my curvy body. As soon as I walked through the doors into the dance, all eyes were on me. I couldn't believe how much of a difference my outfit could make. All the guys kept trying to get my attention, but I just wanted to dance. It was such a fun night, but the next day was crazy. I got to class and we had to hand in our essays. I went to give mine to the teacher, and when I was walking back to my seat, a girl called Paloa stopped me and said, "Jasmine, everyone knows your melons are fake. You had plastic surgery, didn't you?" She said it so loud, and everyone started laughing, even my friends. I was so embarrassed and just ran out of there crying. Why would she say something like that? To make matters even worse, when I eventually came back to my desk, I noticed someone had messed with my artwork. I love drawing, especially Dragon Ball characters, and I'd drawn a Goku that morning. Someone had ruined it by drawing fake boobs, and then underneath they'd written, "You are so fake." I honestly wanted to run out of there and never go back. People were being so mean. Suddenly, a guy called Peter, who was always quite horrible to me, grabbed the drawing and ripped it up. I didn't understand how people could treat me like this. The rest of my middle school life was pretty much the same. I felt miserable, and I thought finally high school would be better. But on my first day, I was sitting alone and I heard a group of girls whispering about me. They were all really pretty and popular, and I tried to ignore them, but 2 of them came over to me and sat on either side of me. I felt terrified, but suddenly one of them said, "Oh my God, you're so pretty. How come you're eating all alone? You can come sit at our table because you're pretty enough." After my middle school experience, I was so happy that people were being nice to me again. Soon I started hanging out with the pretty girls all the time, and the leader of the group, Ashley, she asked me if I had a boyfriend. And when I told her I didn't, she laughed and said, "Don't you worry, we'll find you one." But I didn't want them to find me one, because the more I hung out with them, the more I realized that the guys they liked were total troublemakers, and I wasn't interested in those type of guys at all. After a few weeks of hanging out with them, I realized they were too much. I didn't want to spend my days gossiping and being surrounded by drama. Just because I was a pretty girl didn't mean I had to hang out with the pretty girls. I heard there was a new kid at school, and the girls were all making fun of him for some reason. I didn't like what they were saying about him. And so the next day, I decided to go introduce myself and see if he was okay. Well, I have no idea why people were making fun of him. He was gorgeous. Drop dead gorgeous. But he was so shy, and so I just sat on a table near him and stared at him nonstop. I eventually plucked up the courage to go and introduce myself. "Hi, I'm Jasmine," I said. "Nice to meet you." Then he said, "I'm Chris. Hi." And after that, we got chatting, and I couldn't believe how much we had in common. I could see everyone staring at us chatting, but I didn't care. Chris said he'd worried that no one would want to be his friend, and I told him that I would be. After that, we started hanging out every day, and I quickly fell for him. He was kinda nerdy, but I liked that about him. One day, before Valentine's, he asked me what my favorite candy was. Then on Valentine's Day, he surprised me with flowers, a box of chocolates, and a teddy bear. Then a few days after, he gave me another surprise. He'd ordered all my favorite candy, Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, and Airheads. I was so happy. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me. And he wasn't interested in me just because I was pretty. He actually cared about me. We started dating soon after that, and then I had my first kiss. It was kind of funny because I'd never kissed anyone before, so I had no idea what I was doing, but it felt nice. And after a while, I really got the hang of it, and now we're so in love. It's been 7 months since we started dating, and I never could have imagined my life could be so good now. We're even planning to get married in the future. I know we're still young, but when you know, you know. Hey, I'm Amy. I'm 23, and I've been besties with my neighbor Drew for years. But I've never thought of sabotaging his wedding, ever. Heck, I thought I'd be the one marrying him. Well, I mean, if no one better came along. Drew's 2 years older than me, but back then, I wasn't your regular girly girl. Instead, I much preferred hanging out with the boys and playing basketball, so we quickly became best friends. But when I hit puberty, how I looked began to matter more to me, so I started making efforts and behaved more like a lady. Result being that guys started noticing me, Drew included. One time back in high school, Drew asked me out, but I just laughed it off and told him to stop kidding. In other words, I rejected him. It was good to know that I had him as a backup, but right then and there, I didn't want to date him. Why would I, when I could have any boy in the school? After that, he pretty much did anything I asked, treated me like a princess, and followed me everywhere I went. Heck, we were so close that it was an in-joke with my family that we would end up together. When I went to study in Europe for 3 years, Drew was still there for me when I went through tough times, or even breakups. Being in a different country meant that Drew and I didn't talk as much as we used to, but I knew that if I needed him, then all I needed to do was click my fingers and he'd appear. Whenever I came back home for the holidays, he was always there at the airport waiting to pick me up. So when I finished my studies and arrived home for good, I expected him to be there to pick me up with a large bunch of flowers in hand. But no, he didn't show up. It was only my parents waiting for me. On the journey home, I sat there sulking. Drew had majorly annoyed me. How dare he stand me up? Sensing my mood, Mom asked, "Sweetie, what's up? Aren't you happy to be back?" I muttered out, "Yeah, I just don't appreciate Drew not picking me up." Mom casually said, "Oh, right. Although, I suppose planning the wedding is keeping him busy. I'm sure he just forgot." I sat upright in my seat. What? Wedding? Whose wedding? My mom then acted surprised. "He didn't tell you? Oh, how busy the groom-to-be must be." "Honey, it's Drew's wedding." This uneasy feeling washed over me. I felt like I'd been cheated on. Okay, so I didn't love him, but that's not the point. How dare some girl come along and steal him away from me? I arrived home to see Drew pacing the curb. He spotted me and gave me an excited wave. I stormed over to him and shouted out, "Why didn't you tell me you're getting married?" He smiled and then replied, "I'm sorry, Amy. I just wanted to do it in person as I have an important question to ask you." He sounded so serious. Then he reached into his pocket. OMG. Was he going to propose to me? Has this all been a prank leading to this moment? But no, he pulled out a packet of mints and offered me one. At that moment, a girl walked out of his house and passed him a coffee. He wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed the top of her head. Yuck! Amy, you remember Emily, right? She was in your year at school. She's my fiancée. We'd like to ask you to be our bridesmaid. Emily added, "Actually, he wanted you to be his best man, since we all know how close you guys are, but that would look a little strange, don't you think?" I just stood there speechless with my mouth wide open. No, I didn't remember this Emily girl from school, and I didn't want to be her stupid bridesmaid. Drew joked, "Aren't you happy for me? I know you'll love this. That's why I waited till now to tell you, to be able to see your over-the-top reaction." I had no reaction. I literally couldn't find any words to say and just stood there motionless as the realization that the guy I could always count on was now someone else's, and I was meant to help them out with their lame wedding. I tried being happy for them, but they just made me feel so sick. Now whenever I wanted to see Drew, there's Emily tagging along, and they always talk to each other in this annoying high-pitched voice, not to mention the kissing and hugging every 5 seconds. I couldn't stand seeing their PDA for another moment, so I decided to pull some mischievous pranks. First, I kept asking Emily to eat fast foods with me, which I told her that I extremely craved for since I'd been abroad for so long. But the real reason was just that I wanted her to gain weight quickly and be unable to fit into her wedding dress. And I succeeded. When the three of us visited the wedding shop, whichever dress that Emily liked to try, she couldn't fit in. So the only one that fitted her looked very old-fashioned and ugly. Seeing her sulky face, I was so happy inside. Until Drew ran towards her and comforted her. He praised her as the most beautiful woman in the world, no matter what she wore. And he was very lucky to marry her. Ugh, I want to puke for real. A few days later, Emily held her bachelorette party. As the party venue was close to my house, Emily and her friends decided to come over to prepare themselves before the party. Though I found it bothersome at first, then I realized that it's a good opportunity for another prank. That afternoon, when they were all busy putting on makeup and getting dressed, I offered to help Emily iron her dress as I was ironing mine. She agreed and handed me the dress. I secretly turned up the iron's temperature, and it burnt her silk dress in a blink. I screamed and acted like it was an accident. Emily and her friends immediately rushed over. They were shocked to see the dress was totally ruined. I apologized frantically as tears started to well up in Emily's eyes. "Are you sure you didn't do it on purpose?" a friend of Emily asked me. Then everyone gave me a dirty look. "No, don't say that. Amy's just trying to help me," Emily said through tears. Jeez, why did she have to be so nice? After that, she called Drew, cried desperately, and told him everything. And just half an hour later, Drew showed up and handed Emily a brand new dress, which is even prettier than the old one. Emily hugged Drew, kissed him on the cheek, and went on and on about how he's the best. Yuck! Suddenly, some of Emily's friends whispered something like, "Emily is so lucky to have a fiancé like Drew." Unlike Carl, he is really useless. So Carl was Emily's ex, right? I wondered if he also wanted to break this wedding like me. So I did some digging online and easily found Carl. Then I messaged him, telling him I was Emily's bridesmaid and I had something super urgent to tell him about her. He agreed to meet me at a bar downtown. First impression, this guy's actually kinda cute. Turns out, goody two-shoes Emily has good taste in guys. As I sat down next to him, I noticed that Carl had been drinking a lot. But I didn't think much of it at the time. I gave my best convincing look and told him, "Emily still has feelings for you. She's now having cold feet about the wedding." At first, he didn't say much. He just kept on drinking. But suddenly, he stood up and slurred out how he needed to confess his love to her. Right now! So I followed him to her house. That night, the bridesmaids were having a sleepover at Emily's to help her prepare the guest list for the wedding and stuff. I quickly came in and made up some excuse for showing up late. And that's when we all heard something noisy coming from outside. Everyone ran to the porch to check out Carl begin to drunkenly slur out something like, "I will always love you," and such. Emily looked shocked and tried persuading Carl to go home. I watched on with a secret smirk as he threw up in her pot plant, accused the other bridesmaids of being traitors, and tripped over the cat as he tried to enter her house. Carl eventually passed out on the couch, and Emily, being Emily, placed a blanket over him. She didn't even look angry. Why? I couldn't understand why I had done so many things, but she could be so calm and overcame everything. The next day, when Carl woke up, they talked, and I was terrified Carl would tell Emily about my involvement. But instead, he apologized to her, wished her the best for the future, then left. A few days later, Carl asked me to meet him at a coffee shop. He asked me why I lied to him, as Emily said she was very blissful to marry Drew. I sighed and told him the truth. I also said that I didn't have feelings for Drew, I just hated to see the two of them together. Then Carl said,
"Don't let jealousy get the best of you. Listen to me, Amy. What we need to do now is restore our life and leave the past behind."
I felt down upon hearing his words, but I knew Carl was right. Despite Drew having been my best friend since childhood, it was the moment he needed to have a life of his own.
"Don't be so sad,"
Carl said, patting my hand gently. I looked up and was fascinated by not only Carl's look, but also his maturity and sensitivity. The wedding day came. I stood next to Drew and Emily as they exchanged their rings to take a vow to be husband and wife. Somehow, I felt so proud that my best friend found his life partner. But still, I felt a little uneasy inside, until I spotted Carl in the crowd. He walked over, gave me a bright smile, and joked that he was going to spend the rest of the day here so I couldn't cause any more havoc. I laughed out loud and responded, it was more about him than me that would be causing trouble in the wedding. After the ceremony, we spent time together walking through the park and went to an arcade. I have to admit that it was kind of fun and took my mind off things. Since then, something weird happened. I've found myself thinking about Carl a lot. Like, a lot. Am I developing feelings for him? Maybe now is the time for me to find my life partner too. And I think I've found a great candidate.
Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm 20 years old. I fell in love on the first day of college. I'm not even joking. I'd promised my mom I'd focus on my studies and wouldn't fall for any boys. But one look at Brett, and I broke that promise immediately. We had an instant connection, and pretty soon we were spending every waking moment together. I can't help but think that if I hadn't met him, maybe I'd never have found out the dark secret my mom and aunt had been hiding from me my whole life. You see, my mom raised me alone, and I had no idea who my dad was. Let's just say it seemed like my mom got around, so she really didn't want me to get into the same kind of situation as her. I decided to keep Brett a secret. She didn't need to know, right? When I went home for Christmas vacation, I missed Brett so much, but I couldn't let my mom know about him. So I'd wait until she went to bed before calling him. One night, she caught me, though. She must have gone to the bathroom, and suddenly I heard footsteps. She was standing right there. I didn't know how much she heard, but I was so embarrassed. I thought she'd grab the phone from me and tell me off, but instead, she just walked back to bed. It was so weird. In the morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table grinning and said, "Well, who is he then? Invite him over. Don't be shy." I couldn't believe it. I thought she'd freak out, but instead she wanted to meet him. She suggested we invited him over for dinner, as my aunt was also coming over that night. My mom and my aunt were like best friends, and had basically raised me together, so I was excited for her to meet Brett too. He took the bus that afternoon, as he was desperate to see me, and my mom said he could stay in the spare room. As soon as my mom saw Brett, she grinned at me and whispered how handsome he was. Then we sat down to dinner and started chatting. My mom had so many questions for him, and it was a bit awkward. She wouldn't shut up, and it made her seem so nosy. She asked where he'd grown up, and what his mom and dad did, and even asked for their names and stuff. Meanwhile, my aunt just sat there quietly, and then at one point she got up from the table and went out into the garden. My mom ran after her, and Brett looked at me worried. I had no idea what was wrong. 10 minutes later, my mom came in and her expression had totally changed. She went from being warm and friendly to totally strict and cold. She looked at both Brett and I and said she decided I was far too young to have a boyfriend staying over, and then asked Brett to leave. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was 20 years old. She was being so rude. So I said to her, "Mom, why? Please, can he just stay?" I was almost begging her, but she looked so serious and firm, and I knew she wasn't going to change her mind. Brett was even more shocked than me. I mean, it had been my mom who'd invited him in the first place, and now there she was, shooing him away. He quickly grabbed his stuff and ordered a taxi. I was so upset I didn't even say bye to him. I just burst into tears and felt so angry at my mom. Right after Brett left, I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room, and my mom stood on the other side begging to speak to me. She said there was something she needed to tell me. I refused to come out and instead sat on the floor on the other side of the door. I could hear my mom crying and knew this was serious. She said the reason she didn't want Brett to stay was because he was actually my half-brother. No, I didn't understand. I asked if my dad was also Brett's dad, and then I got angry. I thought my mom hadn't known who my dad was. I opened the door and I was about to start shouting at her when she told me what was really going on. I'd been adopted. Well, actually, I'd been kidnapped by my aunt when I was born. It's a long, shocking story, but basically my biological parents were this rich couple, but they were struggling to get pregnant. My biological mom had a best friend called Ashley, who she told everything to, but Ashley secretly had a crush on my dad. She seduced my dad until one night they slept together, and Ashley ended up getting pregnant. My dad was so happy and promised Ashley he'd help raise the baby, but that he couldn't divorce my mom. This made Ashley angry. She wanted my dad all to herself and wanted their kid to become the heir to his company. At the same time, my biological mom fell pregnant with me, and when my dad found out, he quickly forgot about Ashley and tried to forget about the mistake he'd made that one night. This, of course, made Ashley even more angry, but she still pretended to be friends with my mom. When my mom went into labor with me, my dad was away on a business trip, and Ashley paid someone to sneak into the hospital and kidnap me. That person turned out to be my aunt. She did it because she was desperate for cash, so she snuck in, dressed up as a nurse, and in the middle of the night stole me away. But she wasn't cold-blooded enough to just throw me away or leave me at an orphanage. So she took me to her sister's place and told her that she'd found me abandoned on the street. Her sister, who had never wanted to get married but had always wanted to be a mom, was so happy and decided to raise me. But then a few days later, it was all over the news, a missing baby. There was an exact description of what I'd been wearing, and even a photo of me just after I'd been born. There was no denying that I was the missing baby. My new mom confronted my aunt about it and found out the truth. My aunt said there was no way they could return me as my aunt had already spent all the money she'd been paid to cover some debts. And she didn't want to go to prison, so they decided to raise me as if I really was their own. That secret would still have been hidden from me if I hadn't brought Brett home. My mom was so shocked that I'd brought my dad and Ashley's son into her home and introduced him to her as my boyfriend. As my mom told me all of this, I just sat there frozen. This was absolutely unbelievable. I felt sick. They'd lied to me all these years, and even worse, my boyfriend was actually my half-brother. My whole life was one big mess. "I hate you, Mom, and I hate you too," I said to my aunt. "You helped that evil monster Ashley get what she wanted, and now you've ruined my life and taken away my family." My mom reached out to hug me, but I didn't want her near me. We both just sat there crying. She tried to calm me down and get me to relax. Then she sighed and said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Your whole life I've been trying to make it up to you. I thought my love for you would be enough. As for Ashley, well, I heard she didn't get what she wanted in the end." "Wait, why?" I don't understand. But she successfully kidnapped me, right? I wiped my tears and looked at her. Yes, sweetie, but her main goal was to become your dad's wife. But that obviously didn't happen. Then she continued. After my aunt had kidnapped me, Ashley had given birth to Brett, and was so happy thinking that my parents no longer had a baby, and that my dad would now leave my mom and go live with her. But that's not what happened. Yes, their dear daughter was taken away, but my dad still stayed with my mom and loved her even more. My dad didn't get together with Ashley, but apparently my dad had still been helping raise Brett until now. There's definitely no bad blood between them because I've heard Brett talk about his dad quite a lot. Now there was only one thing for it. I had to find my biological parents and find out the rest of the story. They deserved to know I was alive. But now, what would I do about Brett? I'd have to break up with him somehow.
Hi, my name is Mia, and I lived the first 14 years of my life trapped in a lie. I never left the house, and by that, I mean never. I grew up believing that I was allergic to the sun, and if I stayed out in it too long, I'd turn to dust. Dumb, I know, but I was just a kid, and I had no reason not to believe what my mom told me. On the rare occasions, I went out into the backyard, and my skin turned all blotchy and puffy. Looking back on it now, it's clear Mom had given me something to bring my skin out in a rash, but at the time, I honestly believed the sun was out to get me. I remember peering behind the curtain and watching the kids play out in the street. They looked like they were having so much fun, and I felt so sad that I couldn't join them. Mom charged into my room, quickly closed the curtain, and then she grabbed my shoulders and shouted at me, "Mia, never do that again. The sun can come in through the curtains and turn you to a crisp. Is that what you want?" I remember sobbing as I shook my head. I never did peer out at the other kids again after that. I could still hear them playing, so I would close my eyes and imagine that I was out there with them, playing chase and learning how to ride a bike. I so wanted that to be my reality. The problem was I didn't have that life. Instead, I was stuck inside with no friends. I'd never even touched the grass before. Mom homeschooled me. She took this really seriously and got really mad when I didn't understand something. One time, I gave the wrong answer to a math equation, so she screamed at me, "You're such an idiot! I've had enough of you!" Then she locked me in my room without dinner. Crazy, huh? But back then, I was so scared that from then, I didn't dare to ask her anything. It's always just Mom and me, and no one else in my house. She said my dad had died when I was a baby. Again, I had no reason not to believe her. I never had a phone to talk to anyone, and who did I have to talk to? Still, I remember being fascinated by this strange object she often pressed to her ear. Whenever she was on the phone, I believed she was talking to herself. Mom would lock me in the house while she went out. Then when she returned, she'd just throw me something to eat. A sandwich, a packet of potato chips, and sometimes she changed the meal to bread. She never really cooked. I'm not even sure if she knew how to. My house was a simple old house. There's not many things in it. No TV, no sofa, a basic kitchen. I mean, it looks like an abandoned house, but I thought it was normal because I'd not seen any other houses. My room was small, cold, and dark. I only had a hard mattress and some itchy old pillows. I didn't even have a bed cover. I used to shiver myself to sleep each night and dream of being out there playing with the other kids. Then, things got worse when I turned 10. Mom stormed into my room, gave me some food and a pile of books, and told me that I had to stay in my room from now on, so she knew I was safe. I put up with 4 years of this. It was horrible. She chucked my meals at me and gave me new books once a week. I felt so hungry and lonely all the time. Then one day, when evening arrived and she still hadn't fed me, my hunger pains got the better of me. So I tried the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. So I snuck downstairs. That's when I saw Mom pacing the room, her phone in hand. She said, "Yes, I know, Toby. Well, she's finally of age, so when are you coming to get her? Then she said, tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be counting the money. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. Then I heard Mum say, well, I suppose I better go and feed her then. I quickly darted upstairs and lay on my mattress. Mum appeared and passed me a sandwich and some water. She sat down next to me, which was odd, as she hardly ever did this. And she smiled at me as she said, we need to get you cleaned up, and I've bought you a new dress to wear. Why, Mum? I asked her. Her smile faded into a scowl, and she kicked my mattress. Why do you always have to be so insolent? I didn't want to upset her further, so I didn't ask her anything else. Then the next day, Mum made me put the new dress on and let me out of my room. Then there was a knock at the door, and Mum brought this strange man in. I'd never interacted with anyone other than Mum before, so I just sat there, feeling afraid. He was around my mum's age and tall, really tall, and he had unkind eyes. He passed my mum an envelope, and she opened it and took out a lot of bits of paper. I know now that this was money, but back then, I didn't fully understand what it was. Mum counted it out, then nodded at him and said, she's all yours.
Right. You're coming with me, sweetie.
He walked towards me. What? I stared at him open-mouthed.
Mia, you're going to live with this man now.
Mum said it like it was no big deal.
That's what happens when you turn 14. You have to leave.
But Mum, why? I don't know him. I won't go. Then she slapped me and shouted out loud, go with him. I'm done with you. That's when I realized that I couldn't live with this woman anymore. I ran out of the front door. Surely turning to dust was better than living with any of them. Only, as the sun touched my skin, it didn't burn. That's when I knew Mum had been lying to me all this time. So I started running without knowing where I was going. I could hear Mum and that Toby guy chasing and shouting after me, but I just kept on running. Every little sound freaked me out, as I didn't understand this world and the people in it. The next thing I remember is some woman shaking me and saying, sweetie, are you okay? I was so afraid at first and curled up into a ball, but then she told me she wasn't going to hurt me, she just wanted to help me. She had kind eyes, not like Mum or that man. So I told her what had happened. She looked completely shocked, but she rang the police. So it turns out that when I was a baby, I was stolen. My mum isn't really my mum at all. She was some messed up woman who took me out of my pushchair and made some awful deal with that Toby man that he could buy me off her when I was 14. She didn't know my real parents. She just saw a chance to grab me, and she took it. It's horrible to think that she robbed me of a normal life, but I try not to dwell on this thought too much. I can't change the past. Then eventually, something amazing happened. My real parents were found. It was so emotional seeing them for the first time. They hugged me and we all just cried. They told me how they'd never stopped looking for me. And guess what? I found out I have a little sister called Izzy. I love hanging out with her and watching her play. She's the best. It's been hard. There's so much I've had to learn, such as how to interact with people and even how to eat with a knife and fork. My real parents have been so kind and patient with me. Now, at the age of 19, I have some sort of normal life. I still find many things confusing, and I struggle being around large crowds. I had to get used to sleeping on a bed, and I find computers the most confusing thing ever. But I managed to function in the big, wide world. As for my fake mom and Toby, well, they were both sentenced for their involvement in my kidnap and are now in jail for a very long time. I have a chance at leading a normal life in the normal world, and even though what happened to me was horrible, I'm not going to let those cruel people ruin my life. I finally have a loving family, and I know that with their care and support, I can get through anything.
Hey, I'm Ryan, and I'm here to prove why it's impossible for guys and girls to just be friends. Yeah, I know it's the 21st century and all, but I only reached this conclusion through experience. My ex Carrie was friends with this super annoying guy called Chris. They'd known each other for years, but it was obvious he liked her. I saw how gooey-eyed he was around her. She was so insistent that there was nothing going on between them, but guess what? After we broke up, it didn't take long for them to go official on social media. After that, I started dating this awesome girl called Lily. I didn't even mind the fact that there were a few guys in her group, as I eventually befriended them all too. They're all nice, and especially this one guy Todd seems like a cool dude. We played basketball together and chatted about video games. Lily didn't like me talking to him though. She said she found it weird that I was so friendly with him, and she'd rather I wasn't. Whatever, I just put this down to the fact that girls could be weird sometimes. Okay, so maybe Lily didn't seem to like Todd all that much. She never sat by him or really spoke to him. It was probably just some ridiculous girl drama thing. So I continued to chat with Todd as normal. He was a genuine guy who did nice things. Such as when Lily got super drunk at some party, he was the one who called me up to come and get her. And then he stayed up with her until I arrived. I actually kind of felt sorry for Todd, as the rest of the group all had partners, so he was left being the gooseberry. Once, when me and Lily were feeding each other strawberries and being all lovey-dovey, I noticed how glum he looked. Suddenly, an idea popped into my head. I should help him find a girlfriend. So I have this one friend called Gemma. She's sweet and pretty, but she can be a little on the overbearing side. She's always sneaking candy bars in my backpack with sticky notes on them saying, "Enjoy, love, G, X." And she likes every single picture I post on social media pages. I've told her I'm not interested in her like that as I'm with Lily, but she always just smiles and says, "I know that's silly." Anyway, Todd struck me as the kind of guy who may like a candy-giving, slightly clingy girl. So on a group outing to the cinema, I told him how I felt bad for him being the only single one in the group, and how I had this friend who'd be perfect for him. At first, he shook his head and said thanks but no thanks, as he wasn't looking for a girlfriend right now. I wasn't taking no for an answer. So the next week I bombarded him with messages all about how amazing Gemma was. In the end, he agreed to go on a date with her. And afterwards, he messaged me, thanking me for setting it up, and telling me how he'd had a great time. Result? Just call me Dr. Love, please. Oh, you're welcome. My relationship with Lily was going great. So when she said she was going away for the night with her friends, I told her this was cool, as I trusted her and I trusted them. Then at 3 a.m., when I was shooting zombies on my game, my phone buzzed. It was Todd. "We've been playing Truth or Dare. Sorry, but I think you need to hear this." This was followed by a voice message. My heart sank, as in a tipsy voice I heard Lily say, "Before loving Ryan, I actually had feelings for another guy, and I kinda still do now, The recording ended there. Not that it mattered, as I'd heard enough. My girlfriend liked someone else. Then Todd messaged me. "Sorry for that, bro. Thought you deserved the heads up." I thanked him for his honesty. I knew it must have been hard for him to call out Lily. As I saw it, he was a really good guy with the right intentions. For obvious reasons that night, I couldn't sleep at all. So the next morning, I got up early and went for a jog to try and clear my mind fog. That's when Gemma rang me up and asked me out on a picnic. I agreed. I figured that it'd beat moping around all miserable. By the time I arrived back from my jog, Gemma was already parked outside of my dorm, a smile on her face and a picnic basket in hand. I commented on how quick she'd packed it, and she blushed and mentioned something about female intuition. I stank, so I went and showered quickly. Then, as I was getting into Gemma's car, Lily messaged me, telling me she'd be back by noon and I should come over for lunch. But I'm not in any mood to deal with her just yet. So I messaged her saying I was busy with an assignment. The picnic was great. It was such a sunny day, and Gemma filled the basket with all of my favorite treats. I arrived back feeling positive about things. So what if Lily had a crush on another guy? It didn't mean she didn't love me, right? So I went over to Lily's place, but when she opened the door, she just scowled at me and said, "Oh, it's you." Of course it was me. Who else would it be? I followed her inside, but her mood only worsened. I tried asking her about her trip, but she answered with shrugs and eye rolls. Feeling annoyed, I asked her what her problem was. Then she just went into full rage mode and shouted at me. "What's my problem? Why don't we talk about you? Where have you been today? Don't think you can lie to me." Then she showed me on her phone, and on the screen was one of Gemma's posts about how she'd had a lovely picnic with me. We're just friends, Lily, you know that. You spent all night with your guy friends, and I didn't moan about it. Well, I know she likes you, and now you're just hanging out with her behind my back. Fueled by anger, I yelled at her. So what? You're not really innocent either. I know you prefer some other guy over me. Well, then I suggest you go and date him instead. What? Whatever. You know what? Fine. Maybe I will. Yeah, well, I think you should. I stormed out of there and charged up the street. By the time I arrived back at my dorm, the reality dawned on me that I'd just broken up with the love of my life. Jeez, this sucked. From then on, whenever I saw Lily around campus, she totally ignored me. It was the worst feeling ever. Todd messaged me a lot to check if I was okay. I kind of hoped he could help me get back with Lily, but I was getting some seriously weird vibes from him. Once he even sent a message saying, "You're an amazing guy, and you're way too good for Lily anyway." Okay, weird. Did he have a crush on me? That would explain why Lily was wary of me making friends with him. Worse still, I had Gemma hanging around me like some sort of limpet. Because I was lonely, I agreed to go for a coffee with her. She left her phone on the table when she went to the toilet. It beeped, so I looked at it. And that's when I saw that Todd had a picture of him holding Lily in her arms with the caption, "Hey, look, I've succeeded. You two quickly finish your quest, although maybe we should pass on the double date." As Gemma walked back over, I waved the picture in front of her and said, "I think you have some explaining to do." The color drained from her face, but she gave me a feeble nod. It turns out that on her date with Todd, they discussed how she was crazy about me and how he was into Lily. Then Todd had shown Gemma the messages I'd sent him, telling him how great she was and why I thought he should date her. So he made out I must secretly like her and suggested they come up with a plan to split us up. There I was thinking Todd was my friend, but turns out the whole time he was an evil genius. Crying, Gemma played me the full voice message that Todd had sent her from that night. Before loving Ryan, I actually had feelings for another guy. And I still kinda do now, but it doesn't matter, as I've decided that Ryan's the guy for me. Besides, some of you have probably noticed that the other guy, well, it's Todd. We're just friends though, so let's leave it be. I told Gemma to stay away from me. Then I stormed out of there. She shouted after me, but I ignored her, and I've been ignoring her ever since. So there we go. In the end, opposite-sex friendships never bring any good. I wanted to believe that guys and girls could just be friends, but clearly they can't. I've given this a lot of thought, and decided to tell Lily everything, as she deserves to know what a cruel and conniving guy Todd is. I don't know how she'll react, but I know I have to let her know, right? I hope she gives me another chance, but it might be too late. Todd tore us apart with his mind games, and I stood by and let him. Geez, I miss her. Wish me luck.
Hey, Haley here again. So, in the last episode, Eric had gone to LA to become a singing sensation, while I was left at home, missing him like crazy. When he told me he was performing his debut stage, I decided to go to LA and surprise him. Only, my plan failed miserably when I showed up at the wrong address. Then his manager, Will, answered the phone and told me Eric was too busy to meet me. Naturally, I felt bummed out, but Anna and Kurt insisted on cheering me up, so they took me to Disneyland. Okay, so I tried to have fun. I really did. But everywhere I looked, I saw lovey-dovey couples. Anna and Kurt seemed to be growing closer. They kept on taking pictures together. As happy as I was for them, this reminded me that Eric wasn't here with me. Then, when I was deep in thought, my phone beeped. I smiled when I saw it was a message from Eric and presumed he was sending me over his address. But instead, he said,
"There are VIP tickets to collect for you. I can't wait to see you backstage after the show. Smiley face, X."
I couldn't believe my eyes. Eric had got us 3 VIP tickets. It was a sold-out show, so it was the coolest thing ever. As soon as I showed the message to my friends, Anna squealed excitedly, but I couldn't help but notice that Kurt didn't look all that thrilled. We got ready and arrived at the show super early. I went to the booth to pick the tickets up. I looked at the tickets excitedly, but what's this? There was nothing on them about being VIP tickets. There must have been a mistake, right? So I asked the lady behind the desk about it. She frowned at me and assured me there was no mistake. Annoyed, I walked off and called Eric, but unsurprisingly, he didn't answer. No doubt he was in rehearsals or something. I was really disappointed because I just wanted to be by his side, to encourage and cheer him on the first time he performed. But now I couldn't. Plus, I was a little nervous his stage fright would return. I explained the mix-up to the others, and Anna was cool about it, and Kurt just rolled his eyes and muttered out,
"Figures."
I didn't bother asking him what he meant by this. I was already bummed out enough. The show was great, and Eric's performance, well, it was so amazing. He'd come on so much since I'd last heard him sing, and I was so proud of him. As soon as the show ended, I rang Eric again, and this time he picked up. I told him about the tickets, and he seemed confused. He confirmed to me that he asked the manager for 3 VIP tickets for us. Then Eric continued.
"Now I'm joining an after-party. I'll send you the address. Let's meet there."
I replied, "Sure, I'll be there. I miss you." I told Anna and Kurt about the party, but they both said they were tired, so made their way back to the hotel. It's okay, as I grabbed a taxi and went to the party by myself. As soon as I entered, I was overwhelmed by the bustle of the party. I'd only been there a few minutes, and I saw a super famous actor walk past me. This was so cool. I grabbed a glass of wine, stood in the corner of the room, and looked at Eric. He stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by a lot of people toasting glasses. Suddenly, I felt like an outsider. Now Eric was a rising star, and I was still an unknown child. After a while, the crowd thinned out, and then a smiling Eric walked over to me. Oh my God, my heart was beating so fast. Finally, I could meet him. I happily waved at him. But then suddenly, Will strode over and whispered something in his ear before he pulled him away. What? Why did he do that? I didn't even have time to say anything to Eric. An anxious restlessness swirled in my heart, so I secretly followed the two of them. Will pulled Eric over to the end of the hallway and said harshly,
"How dare you bring that girl here? If the press finds out, you can kiss goodbye to your career."
Eric replied,
"She's my girlfriend."
Will interrupted immediately.
"You have to keep this a secret. If your fans know that you have a girlfriend already and that she's some nobody, they will definitely turn their back on you."
After a moment of silence, Eric spoke up.
"Is it you who changed the VIP tickets to regular ones?"
He replied,
"Yeah, that was me. It's for the best. Trust me, you don't want all your efforts down the drain, do you?"
Eric was silent and said nothing. Then Will continued,
"You see, Haley saw your success, so she wanted to approach you. Think about it."
What? What did he just say? I was shocked and angry to hear this. I waited for Eric to defend me, but to my confusion, he didn't say a thing. Is this what Eric thought of me? That I was only using him to ride on his fame? I immediately stepped out and appeared in front of them. They both looked totally shocked, but I looked right at Will with wild eyes and said, "You don't need to worry. I'm out of here right now." Then I turned to Eric. "I honestly believed you had more faith in me. I guess now I know where I stand. We're over. I hope fame's everything you expect it to be." I stormed out of there, somehow managing not to burst into tears until I reached the street. My heart hurt so much when I realized a harsh fact. Popularity was the invisible wall that separated me and Eric. Then suddenly, I heard someone calling my name. I turned back and saw Eric chasing after me, but I carried on walking. He caught up with me and pulled on my hand.
"Haley, you misunderstood everything. Let me explain."
I stopped walking and said, "I think I've heard enough. Don't worry, I won't affect your career." Eric quickly interrupted me.
"No, don't say that. I'm so sorry. Haley, I promise I won't let Will interfere with our relationship anymore."
He hugged me tightly, and I felt my heart melt. It felt so familiar being in his arms. I missed him so much, and wanted to believe him. My tears kept rolling down my cheeks, but not because of anger. It was tears of love. We stood like that for a long time. Then Eric said,
"Let me take you to a place."
Then he drove me to the Griffith Observatory. And whoa, it was so beautiful. We sat there and watched the stars twinkling. This night had been a roller coaster, but right now, there was nowhere else I'd rather be. So I looked at him and said, if only this moment could last forever. Eric smiled at me, then asked,
"So, how long are you gonna stay here?"
I looked at him sadly and replied, I have to go back tomorrow. Eric pleaded with me.
Can you stay for another week? Next week I'm free. I'll show you the LA hotspots. Stay with me. Please?
Swing Club could cope without me for a week, right? And it would be amazing to spend some quality time with Eric. So I agreed to stay for another week. Anna and Kurt had flights booked for the next day, so they went back. I'm glad I chose to stay, as the next week with Eric by my side was amazing. We went to so many cool places, such as the Getty Center and the Farmers Market. I was so happy to always be with him. But there was one thing that annoyed me. Eric had to wear this wig, oversized hat, and big shades to disguise himself everywhere. But anyway, I knew that was best for him, for his career, and for me. The week whizzed by, and soon my last full day in LA arrived. And although I missed my friends in Swing Club, I felt sad about leaving Eric. Eric was performing at this music festival that day, so he gave me a ticket, and grinning said,
Here, now I know it's definitely VIP.
This was so sweet of him, so I smiled and thanked him. The festival was huge. I'd never seen so many people before in my life. And then there was the VIP area. Oh my god, I spotted an A-list rapper praying for his performance, and a famous boy band practicing their dance routine. Eric's performance was, as always, outstanding. Afterward, I rushed into the VIP area and into the big tent. Whoa, it was full of so many famous people. I tried finding Eric, then I spotted him in the corner. He was talking to a girl. I walked over to him, and I couldn't believe my eyes. With him was Clara. She's this super famous singer who's been dubbed the new Taylor Swift. I really admired her. She's only 2 years older than me, but she's achieved so much. On seeing me, Eric introduced me to Clara. It turns out she's with the same record company as him, and they were preparing to release a product together. I happily said, hi, to Clara, and eagerly asked her to take a photo with me. I hurriedly took my phone from my bag and was about to hold it up to take a photo, but Clara immediately pushed my hand away and took a step back, then said, no, I'm not free. This surprised me, so I muttered, oh, okay. Then she sweetly smiled at Eric as she rubbed his shoulder and said, bye, Eric. I'll catch you later. Then completely blanking me, she sashayed away. What just happened? I stood there open-mouthed and feeling confused. Honestly, what is being a famous artist? Was it necessary to deliberately act arrogant to prove herself a star like that? Hey, Haley again. So, in the last episode, my life was currently one big mess. Not only had I found out that my boyfriend Eric was dating the superstar Clara, but now some jerks were trying to kidnap me in the park. Luckily, someone came to my rescue. I turned around to see who it was, and OMG, it was Kurt. I've never been so pleased to see someone in all of my life. The boy gripping my arm said to Kurt,
I suggest you get out of here. Can't you see we're kind of busy here?
Kurt replied,
Let her go. Don't let me hurt you.
They both laughed and grabbed my arm harder as they pulled me forward. I tried wriggling free, but they were both just too strong. It was horrible, and I cried out in pain. Immediately, Kurt charged towards them and started fighting them off me. Wow, I'd never seen this side of Kurt before. He was like the Hulk. After a few minutes, the two boys ran off in fear. When they were both far enough away from Kurt, they turned around and shouted,
You little turd! You just wait!
Then they hurried away. Those boys scared me to death. But I didn't want to appear like a weak little girl to Kurt, so I just smiled and said, Thanks, bro. Those karate classes definitely paid off. Kurt looked furious. He yelled at me.
What are you doing here? And at this time? It's late now. Don't you know it?
I muttered out, I had something on my mind and didn't realize the time. But it's okay now. You're here and saved me. Forget it. Let's go home. I'm hungry. He frowned at me.
Don't change the subject. It's because of Eric, right? Is he worth it, Haley?
I couldn't help but burst into tears upon hearing that. Did I do something wrong? He told me to believe him, so I believed him blindly, no matter what happened, even when he didn't text me back, even when those rumors were everywhere. But you know what? He's left me for Clara, and he didn't even bother to tell me this himself. I heard it from his manager. Kurt said,
Haley, he doesn't deserve you. Trust me, that jerk's not worth it.
I sniffed. But I still love him, even when he hurt me so much. I sat down on the ground and cried even louder. Kurt sat down next to me and patted my head.
Don't be sad. You're gonna be a massive star, much bigger than him or his stupid girlfriend. And then make him regret. Now, let me take you home.
I nodded my head, and he put his arm around my shoulders to comfort me as we walked. The next morning, when I was lying on my bed in my PJs, Anna and Kurt came to my room and asked me to go out to get some fresh air. I didn't feel like going anywhere, but sitting around moping wasn't doing me any good. Anna brushed my hair and picked me out an outfit. Then Kurt drove us all to the park. Kurt and I were sitting on the bench and waiting for Anna to buy some ice cream. I asked, "What were you doing in the park last night anyway?" I thought it was over, but luckily, you were there. Kurt replied,
I passed the park while coming home, so I decided to walk around to get some fresh air. Then I heard your voice, so I ran to see what was happening.
I smiled. Wow, how lucky was I, right? Thanks a lot, Kurt. Kurt nudged me and said,
I hate seeing you like this. Why do you have to hurt yourself for someone who doesn't belong to you?
His words have shaken me. Kurt was right. I wasn't myself. I'd turned into a version of myself I didn't like. To try and hold onto a boy who'd already let me go, as much as it hurt, last night had made me realize that I needed to face the truth. I sighed and replied, You're right. It's time to let him go and live my own life. Suddenly, Kurt told me,
I'm always here for you, and I'm happy to wait.
I turned to him, smiled, and replied, You're my best friend, Kurt, and I care about you. But preventing someone from finding their true love is just as bad as keeping someone who doesn't love you. You deserve the world, and I can't give you that, just as Eric can't give it to me. Kurt gave a disappointed sigh. I didn't want to hurt him, but I couldn't lie to him either. My heart didn't belong to him. After going out with Kurt and Anna, I felt much better about everything. I realized that music was still my only love and passion, and I needed to focus on it and not let anything else get in the way. We were about to graduate soon, and I didn't have much time, so I wanted to dedicate all this precious time to the swing club. The school ceremony was coming, and I wanted to take this opportunity to have a memorable performance, but Phil still insisted on not letting me sing his song. What a stingy boy! I didn't understand what his problem was with me. Why did he have to view me as his enemy? Then, one time, when I was walking past the practice room, I saw Phil training with some other members. OMG! Why could he let everyone but me sing his song? So I walked into the room and greeted him with a wave, but he just kept his poker face as if he didn't see me. Ugh! This guy thought he's Ice Prince or what? He just glared at me.
Do you mind? Auditions are going on here, and you're not invited.
Jeez. Why was he being like this? He wasn't even giving me a chance. I was about to leave the room when I stopped dead on my feet, then walked right up to him. Yes, actually, I do mind. The least you can do is let me audition. He was silent for a minute. Then he replied,
You want to sing my song, right? Fine. But first, you have to rewrite the sheet music of this song 100 times by practice tomorrow.
What? This boy was crazy. He didn't want me to sing his songs, so he thought of this pointless prank? There was no way I would let his wish be fulfilled. So I replied, 100 times, right? Fine by me, but make sure you keep your promise. He thought I couldn't do it, huh? I'll show him who he's messing with. I went home in a rage and started on it right away. It took me all night to write out his song 100 times. By the end of it, the song was completely embedded in my head. Well, it's a good tune at least. The next day in practice, I placed the copies down in front of him. Here are your 100 copies. You can check them if you want. Phil looked at me surprised.
and sneaked a smile. Unexpectedly, you're quite persistent. So, after copying it 100 times, do you know the reason why I don't let you sing my song? I smirked. Of course, yes. It's because you hate me. Really, really hate me, right? Phil knocked on my head and said, Nah, it's not that. You're so confident in your ability that you always change musical notes or the pitch of the song to the way you want them. You never think about the intention of the composer in every musical note, and I can't accept it. What Phil said surprised me, but also made me feel ashamed. That's true. I have always varied the song in my way, as I believed that it would be better to show my singing ability. But I've never thought about how the songwriters must have felt. Was I too confident? Phil slapped my shoulder and said, Stop thinking. After writing down those notes over and over, I guess every note is in your head, right? If you spontaneously change the song without informing me, there won't be another chance. He left, then turned back and shouted, Tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m., in the training room. Remember? The school's 50th anniversary was just around the corner, so it was practice, practice, practice. At least it kept me busy and took my mind off Eric. Besides, it turns out Phil wasn't as hateful as I thought. He was actually a great teacher, and I found that my singing skill has improved a lot. All my practicing paid off, as my performance at the concert was awesome. I've never received such loud applause before. Moreover, the performance was so successful that its video uploaded on the fan page of Swing Club went viral and attracted thousands of views and shares. Maybe Phil was right. I have always focused on showing my voice and forgot that the success of a song wasn't only based on the voice of the singer. Then, Phil came up to me at lunchtime and told me we should release the song and upload it to YouTube. He even suggested we make a professional music video for it. I thought it was extremely insane and impossible. But he said, Come on, Haley. Don't you feel wasted working so hard and only singing a song once? Please give this a shot. Let the world see what they're missing. Okay, so what Phil said made sense. I've always tried to perform perfectly on the stage with the hope that someone would realize my talent and help me become famous. I mean, it worked for others, as well as Eric, but that didn't mean it would work for me. I'd never considered producing a music video by myself. Phil's songs were great, and so was my voice. The last performance was proof of this. So, I agreed with Phil, and we decided to ask for other members' help to produce it. The next few months were crazy busy. We recorded the song, found a location for the video, hired a director and a cameraman. I was worried about the cost, but Phil said he'd cover it, and I could pay him back my share when I was famous. Luckily, other members of Swing Club, especially Kurt and Anna, helped us a lot. Anna was in charge of costumes and makeup, and Kurt was useful with the technical stuff. As for Phil, he became one of my best friends. In fact, we were so close, the other club members called us matching cards of Swing Club. And luckily, all our hard work paid off, as the music video was a massive success and went viral. Wow, this was crazy! As well as having millions of views, there were also so many positive comments and compliments, and this was all in just a few weeks. Okay, so I wasn't a big star yet, but this was a start. My time at school flew by, and my graduation ceremony arrived. I'd had a turbulent last 3 years, but I'd learned so much at West High, and being in the Swing Club, as well as improving my art and maturing, I'd made some amazing lifelong friends. After the ceremony, Kurt, Anna, Phil, and I lay on the grass. I spoke up. I'm going to LA to learn more about music, as it's my biggest passion and also my talent. I will try my best to become a singer, instead of just waiting for luck. Phil agreed with me. He would come to LA and live with passion. Kurt and Anna were different. They decided to enroll in some universities over on the east side. Kurt wanted to step into the musical theater major, and Anna went with the classical music path, so New York was better for them. Everyone had their own plan, and I'm so happy for us all. But suddenly, I thought about Eric. Today was the graduation ceremony, but he was absent.
I remembered when we sat together and thought about the future and said that we would enroll in a university that specialized in music in LA and try to become famous singers. But he was already famous and successful. I couldn't help but wonder if our promise of singing on the same stage together would ever be fulfilled.
Hey, Kelly here. So, my dreams of being a part of an amazing school band, well, they weren't going so well. After a catastrophic prom performance, we all decided to go our separate ways. At least it was until Cole, the hottest boy in freshman year, walked into the room. There he was, smiling in the doorway and holding his electric guitar. So Jill glared at him and said, "What do you want?"
He replied, I know there isn't any member recruitment going right now, but I'd like to join the band if you guys...
I was about to tell him that there was no band anymore, but Mia spoke first. "Yes, sure, of course." Then she rushed over to him and dragged him across the room. Daisy looked puzzled and said, "But weren't we already disbanded?" Then Jill said, "Daisy, you must have misheard us. We said we wanted to expand our brand, not disband." Is this for real? Wow, it's amazing what a cute guy can do. So I just nodded and then said, okay then, I guess. Welcome to the band. Okay, so think about it. This guy might not be in any way musically gifted. Not that it mattered. Because of him, there was currently still a band. And surely girls would come and see us now, even if we sucked. I mean, he's Cole Henderson. For Valentine's Day, he got at least 40 cards. They all fell out of his locker. It was crazy. So, we started practicing, and wow, it turned out Cole had an amazing voice, and he could play electric guitar like a pro. Mia even volunteered to step down and be backing vocals. What was going on? And Daisy was happy not to have to sing anymore and just concentrate on playing bass. Having Cole around solved a lot of our problems. The prom incident was completely forgotten. No more Mia and Jill fighting for the spotlight, but there was one thing. I knew they both had crushes on Cole. I mean, it was so obvious. Mia dressed up for every practice. I mean, she always makes an effort with her appearance, but glittery dresses on a normal school day? That was so over the top. Then there was Jill. Whenever Cole was around, she was so polite to everyone and complimented us on everything. I knew they were low-key competing with each other, as one time Jill's drumstick disappeared, and while she was looking for them, Mia went over to Cole and felt his arm and asked him if he'd been working out. Then another time, Mia's lipstick was replaced with a black one, which she applied before practice. Horrified, she ran into the bathroom to wash it off, and Jill went over to Cole and asked him to teach her how to play guitar while we waited for Mia. The band was certainly eventful, but I had to admit I was enjoying myself. We even decided on a name, Rouge September. This named after three of us have birthdays in September, and Mia and Cole's favorite color is red, but Mia insisted on using the French word for it to be more edgy. Yep, it took us hours to come up with that, but I like it. I like it a lot. We really started to improve and had lots of fun doing it. Then Cole suggested we play One Direction's What Makes You Beautiful at this upcoming school concert. I loved the song, so I immediately agreed. Even Jill did, and I know she hates One Direction. So we rehearsed like crazy and everyone showed up on time and worked really hard. Yes, Mia and Jill's low-key competing continued, but whatever. At least we were all there practicing. The night of the performance arrived, and I was mixed of excited and scared. Cole helped me set up my keyboard stand, and I noticed that he kept on giving me funny looks. Before I could ask him what was up, it was time to perform. We were so amazing, and everyone was cheering for us. Then the song ended, and Cole started to talk into the microphone.
Thanks, guys. You were awesome. But, there's something I want to say.
Then he looked at me.
Kelly, I just want to let the whole world know that you're the most beautiful girl, and I really enjoyed getting to know you for the past few months, and well, I'd love it if you could be my girlfriend.
What was that? Was he out of his mind? Since when did he have feelings for me? The crowd went crazy, screaming and cheering, while I froze there. I could see Jill and Mia were looking at me with fiery eyes. Cole tried to walk towards me and say something, but the microphone didn't work. Jill had just unplugged it, and Mia charged towards me screaming, "You traitor! Cole is mine!" Cole jumped in front of me to protect me from her. Then Daisy suddenly burst into tears, like hysterically. We all looked at each other, immediately knew, oh boy, she must have had a crush on Cole too. The next thing we knew, a teacher walked on stage and shooed us off. That's when I noticed the whole crowd gapping at us and laughing. Geez, this was so humiliating. Worse still, we walked off stage and the school director said,
So, you think that was funny, do you? Let's see if you're still laughing in detention.
Then he locked us all in a classroom and said we could only leave when we understood what we did wrong and resolved everything. There is no way I wanted to talk to any of them about this mess. Thanks to them, I look like a fool. And now I had detention while I hadn't even done anything. It was some 5 minutes of awkward silence until Cole shyly started.
Okay, we can't just sit here in silence for however long. Look, I like Kelly, and the concert was a great opportunity for me to confess my feelings. That's all.
Was he serious right now? This was the last thing he needed to say right now. Jill suddenly fueled up again and turned to me yelling, "You've been seducing Cole even though you knew I liked him?" Cole tried to chime in.
Guys, this is not how it works.
Mia also came at me. "You don't deserve to be our leader. You're so sneaky." Then there went Daisy, bursting out crying again. Jill tried to comfort her while Mia said, "Another victim of beauty, huh?" Daisy stuttered through tears. Why do you get everything? You got to be the leader. You got the cute boy. You get all the attention." Jill rolled her eyes. "Yeah, so you're the lamest leader. So lame my dog could do better." That was it. I'd had enough of these selfish people. I couldn't hold back anymore and screamed at them. "Oh yeah? You think being a leader is easy? I guess you guys have never spared your precious seconds to think about how much I've done for you all. I got you a platform for the drum, a freaking mask, a dumb rhinestone microphone. You asked for it, I delivered it. It's all because I love this band. I want to have an actual band, a successful music club. I want to leave a legacy here at this school, to make our high school years meaningful. But all I'm getting is hate and some selfish friends that I don't know if I could call friends anymore. I didn't know Cole liked me. In fact, I had no idea. I guess I was being too busy trying to keep this club together to notice. But no more. I'm done." I was out of breath after that, and when I finished, I saw them all looking at me stunned. Detention or no detention, I grabbed my stuff and I was about to leave when Mia timidly said, sorry, I guess it's true. I really haven't thought." Jill added, "Yeah, you should have told us earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't know this really meant that much to you." Daisy wiped her tears. "Yes, and please don't say that, Kelly. Of course. We're still friends. Please forgive us." Cole was about to say something too, then Mia quickly covered his mouth. No, kid. This is our business. Now, Kelly, what do you say? Could you please take us back as your adorable friends and bandmates? Then all three of them gathered up and looked at me with puppy eyes, trying to make me smile. I tried to keep my straight face, but eventually I burst out laughing and hugged them all. Then Daisy cried again, which set all of us off. Even Jill. Cole was sitting there looking at us oddly. When Mia noticed this, she pointed at him and said, "That boy was the one who broke us apart. Don't understand why we were so swooned over him. I wish I knew you were trouble when you walked in." Oh my god, did you just quote Taylor Swift? "You know it's Taylor Swift," Daisy laughed. "But you're right, I'm so over him now." "Yep, stupid crush," Jill agreed. I waved Cole over to join the group hug as I said, "Guys, remember that Cole was the one who saved us when we were on the verge of disbandment. He deserves some credit." "What do you mean on the verge? We were already disbanded," Mia joked. Then Jill added, "Wow, we've been through it all. Now I guess we can get over everything together too, right guys?" I said, "Yes, that's the spirit. Now on 3. 1, 2, 3. Rouge September. Let's go." You thought this was the end to it? Nah, not quite. Later that day when I was walking back home, Cole ran after me.
"Hey Kelly, look, I'm sorry. I had no idea what this club meant to you. Please forget all about my confession and let's be friends. I want to help you with the band and everything."
I smiled at him. I'd like that. So, Peace was restored, and as for Rouge September, well, we're still going. Who knows? One day we might be the greatest band on earth. But yeah, having close friends, being together every day, and playing music together is enough for me. But then something weird started happening. I found myself smiling when I looked at Cole and noticing how cute he was when he tuned his guitar. Did I like him? No, it couldn't be, could it? I mean, if I did that, then that meant I had to confess to him this time around, right? But here's a thought. It surely won't be on stage.